We are talking about education in America on Fox Business all this week. And we may hear from Kamala Harris and her running mate Tim Walz about education as they sit for an interview today. But here's what we already know. Kamala Harris is endorsed by the country's 3 largest teachers unions, and she's part of an administration that's repeatedly doubled down on wiping out student loan debt. Her running mate, Tim Walz, he's a former teacher and principal from Minnesota. And while governor of Minnesota, student performance suffers. Test scores fell. Reading proficiency under 50% in 2023. That's down from 59% in 2019. Math scores also fell to 45% last year from 55% in 2019. Minnesota's national education rankings have fallen from 7th in 2021 to just 19th this year. 30% of students were chronically absent, according to most recent data. And perhaps that's because Walz set the tone for attendance by keeping schools closed during COVID. And now critics worry that when students do show up to school in Minnesota, they're exposed to radical ideologies after the Minnesota Department of Education revised state social studies standards to require an ethnic studies component. I'm really pleased to welcome to this discussion Corey DeAngelis from the American Federation for Children. He's a senior fellow there. Corey, there's so much to get into on this topic, but just based on what I outlined there from both Harris and Walz, do you think this is a record on education that should be elected to the White House?
No, look, Tim Walz, the tyrant, and Kamala, the communist, are in bed with the teachers' unions. They're on the side of the people who fought to keep the schools closed as long as possible. And they think your kids belong to the government. But the reality is, as Trump knows, children should have their education directed by their parents. They should be in the driver's seat. Trump supports school choice. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz do not. They have one solution, which is the definition of insanity, throwing more money at the problem over and over and over again. You saw Tim Walz's education scores plummet in Minnesota. He increased funding by 21% over the same period. So it's not a money issue. It's an incentive issue. And they see the school system as a jobs program for adults and administrators, not an education initiative for kids. They want to focus more on indoctrination than education.
Corey, Trump says he would get rid of the Department of Education. Kamala Harris says, no, she's keeping it. But help us understand, if we got rid of the Department of Education, what difference would that make for parents and for students?
The states would have more money to spend on education as they see fit. So you can have block grants go from the federal Department of Education back to the individual states, and you'll have more local control of the education system. Look, Trump also said that he'd put a libertarian in his cabinet. He can check both of those boxes at once. If he wants to hire me, I'll fire myself on the first day. But look, the Department of Education is not constitutional. The word education is not in the U.S. Constitution. And guess what? It was a payoff by Jimmy Carter, created in 1979, to the teachers unions. It has spent over $1 trillion since its inception, and outcomes haven't gotten any better. It's a wasteful institution. It's just a jobs program for useless bureaucrats in D.C. Let's give that money back to the states.
Like you said, it's not a money issue. Randy Weingarten makes $560,000 a year, 9 times more than the average teacher's salary. And it is her union that's squandering a lot of the money that you just mentioned. But how do you take on that union?
Well, we have to have a new union in town, and they're one for the kids. They're called parents, and parents are actually winning this battle. It's why the unions are really desperate right now, because families are freeing their children from the clutches of Randy Weingarten and her cronies once and for all by passing school choice. If you pass school choice, the money follows the child. That gives the public schools an incentive to do a better job. It's a win-win solution. It improves outcomes in every school. And guess what? It also leads to higher teacher salaries in the public schools because it gives their employers, the district, a stronger incentive to spend money wisely. And what better way to do that than to put it into the classroom? If you look, since 1970, we've increased spending in public schools in the U.S. by 160%. We now spend nearly $20,000 a kid That's about $600,000 per classroom. It's not going to the teachers. It's going towards administrative bloat. People like Randy Weingarten, who make over $500,000 a year. So let's have school choice so the parents win and the teachers win too.
Corey, really quickly, the big news story just recently was down in Florida. A lot of Ron DeSantis's picks or the people he supported for school board didn't get elected. Okay, and some people are saying it's a slowdown of the school choice movement. Is that happening? Are people getting fatigue on that? What do you say?
No, Florida has universal school choice, and guess what? 12 states now have universal school choice, meaning every single family, regardless of income, background, zip code, in these 12 red states can now take their kids' taxpayer money to the school that works best for them. That could be the public school. If you like your public school, you can keep your public school for real this time, unlike with your doctor. But if not, you can take that money to a private school, a charter school. You can use it for homeschooling. So, if you have school choice, you don't have as much of an incentive or need to win the school board races. If you can take your kids somewhere else, that's much stronger form of accountability than a school board meeting where they cut off your mic and call you a domestic terrorist.
Good point.
Corey, it's all about empowering the parent, right, to serve the best needs of their child. Thank you so much. It's exactly why we cover this topic, and we're so grateful to you, Corey DeAngelis, for being a part of the conversation.